Good afternoon, and welcome back to Jeff and the Rabbi. It's been a while. We've been on break, preparing for the new season. We're back. And today happens to be just 5 days away from Shavuos, I believe.
That's right.
And for you, those of you who don't know, Shavuos is the anniversary of God giving the Jewish people the Ten Commandments. Now the question is, why were those 10 Commandments so important? Now, I saw the movie. There was thunder and lightning, and the voice of God comes out of the darkness, forcing Charlton Heston to cower in fear. Then God carves the commandments in a rock with fire. Pretty dramatic. But why such a production for just these top 10? Are you telling me that the rule not to covet your neighbor's somewhat fetching and probably promiscuous wife should outrank not hooking up with your father's sister's aunt's mother, or marrying a bi-curious Gentile eunuch who wears a six-threaded wool suit? Those are also commandments. They just didn't make the top 10. Now, since God didn't have the additional 603 commandments carved into stone tablets, is it okay if we just adhere to the first most important ones? Let's face it, after Rocky IV, nobody really paid attention anymore. And did anyone hear students at Notre Dame at the end of last year's college football season chanting, "We're number 11"? No, it didn't happen. Nobody cared. So can't we be laudable Jews if we just follow the top 10 commandments? Honestly, there is zero chance that my wife is going to come to my aid in a fight by grabbing some of my enemy's private parts. So we won't have to follow the commandment of cutting off her tainted hand. Deuteronomy 25, verses 11 through 12. Got that. So maybe we should worry more about perfecting the most important laws than giving lip service to all the not so important ones. I assume they're not so important if they're not in the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, wow. And first of all, your scholarship is just like blowing me out.
I've been studying.
Wow.
I've been doing a lot of studying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So this is a pretty big deal.
Big deal.
A very fundamental question that you're asking here. Why these 10? Why did these 10 make it, and how did they make it? What are they doing there?
Was there like a judging panel here that judged them?
I mean, there's 613. We all know about that famous number 613. And yet, these 10 made it. Now, first of all, just offhand, I would tell you that there was a great rabbi, and his name Rabbi Saadia Gaon, and he lived in...
I knew that.
Huh?
Vilna, I got that one right.
No, actually,
Different
that
Gaon.
when we're talking, we're going back about 10 centuries before that.
Different
actually.
Gaon guy.
Yeah, back to Babylon. He lived in Babylon
right.
in around 900, and he said that actually all the 613 could be found within these sort of top 10. You could use them as category headings, and everything could be subsumed under the top 10. Now, that's one answer, but there is a way of understanding all of this that gives a flow, as Nachmanides, one of the commentators, lived in Spain, as he explained to us, there is a way of understanding the flow, so that all these 10 flow one right from the other.
Right, okay.
Okay, so now, first of all, we have to divide them into two sides.
Right.
Right,
Here,
you see it? Two sides there, right? There, and there. Okay, two sides. So the two sides are the two different halves of the Ten Commandments, though the other side, now I notice here, it's interesting, on this particular 10 Commandments that you have here,
We do that one, yeah.
the honor your father and mother
That's usually
is,
over here.
usually somehow or another that snuck in as number 5, and it worked its way up into the top of that other side. But I'm not sure that traditionally we go with that layout.
Right.
So traditionally what we have is that, and here's where the problem was, number 1 on that list, it says you shall have no other gods before me. That's number 1. There you go, right on top of your head there.
Talk about
So that number 1 is usually considered to be number 2.
Right.
Because the first commandment really is, I am the Lord your God. That's number 1. And therefore, all the others, it's all juggled around a little bit. But
I got these. These were made at the University of Georgia, where they
Yeah, right.
really don't much what's going on here.
yeah.
Sorry, I should have got the real version here. My bad.
So the first series is basically, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods before me, and don't make any idols. Okay? Then it says, don't take God's name in vain. Then it says, observe the Sabbath. And then it says, honor your parents.
Right.
Okay, so let's first talk about those. I'm Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. Don't make any graven images. Don't bow down to them, it says. Don't swear falsely and observe the Sabbath.
Right.
All of those are understood to mean you have to accept God and recognize his primacy in the world. Like, I'm Lord your God. That's commandment number 1, is to understand that there is a God.
It's a great place to start.
He is totally in control. And as a matter of fact, he says, not only am I your God, but I'm your God that took you out of Egypt. So I'm God who is in control, because look what I did in Egypt. I work in a premeditated fashion. Look what I did in Egypt. I am involved in your life, and I'm not like a removed God. I'm a hands-on God. Look what I did in Egypt.
Yeah.
Okay. So that first lays out what God is, and we got to believe in him. That's number 1. Then we have to be very careful about taking his name in vain. Because if you really revere him as being very, very great, the way you show that is you don't throw his name around cheaply.
So it doesn't just mean cursing with the name of God as people do today. It means you just don't throw out God. You know,
Right.
it's just not in a conversation.
You
throw
don't
it.
swear in God's name.
Right.
Ever. I mean, even to say something is true. Like that's paper, swear to God. That's, don't do that.
Don't do that.
We don't do that. Okay, so that's all part of revering and believing that there's God. Now the next thing up is the Sabbath. The Sabbath is the number 1 way that every Jew is called upon to show that God is the creator. Why? 6 days he created, and the 7th day he rested.
Right.
That is the most fundamental rule that everyone could follow. That is fundamental to our very existence.
Right.
We're here because he created us. It happened in 6 days. On the 7th day he rested. Every time a Jew works 6 days and rests on the 7th day, he is reiterating and displaying by resting on the 7th day that he believes that God is his creator. Not just believes it, he's actually showing it in practice.
Right.
Okay. So all of that is what you have to feel and believe and do about God. But notice that none of it has anything to do with people.
That's true. You haven't brought us up yet.
People. I mean, and here we live in this world, and there's a lot of people.
Now, the last one in 5 could be interpreted either way about honoring thy mother and father, but
Right.
that's an iffy one, though.
Right. So here is where I would say, guess what, folks? All 10 are really all about God.
Ah, okay. Okay.
They're really all about God. There's 2 ways that you revere God. One way is how you feel about him and what you display. For example, never uttering his name unless very special circumstances that shows a certain reverence to God. Knocking off every Saturday, not working. That shows that you really revere God and believe in him as the creator. But the way that you deal with other people, that is also very significant.
Very good point.
Now let's look at the progression. The first one of the people is parents.
Right.
Okay. Why parents? Number 1.
They created you.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got the line. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the opening one that said, I'm God who created you, and don't have any other gods, and so on and so forth. And we're going to parallel that
Very good point.
with people. We're going to show by the way we interact with people that we believe the same to be true of God. So number 1, parents, creator,
Got to give them special reverence.
treat them like you would God. And some of the rules, for example, you don't take your parents' name in vain. Right? You're not allowed to. As a matter of fact, we're really not even supposed to pronounce a parent's name.
I didn't know
We're not
that.
supposed to call them by their first name.
Oh,
And not even supposed to refer to them You know, when I talk about my father or my mother, you don't call them by their name.
I happen to not do that, but I didn't know. I don't refer to them by their name, but I knew that was the reason why.
Just like God. You don't like throw his name around.
Wow.
You don't throw your parents' name around.
Interesting.
Okay? You got to believe that God is your creator,
No matter what your parents are like.
no matter what your parents are like.
Wow.
That's right, because they are your creators. Whether you don't like them, you don't like the way they're acting, but the bottom line is creation, they created you. You believe in they created you, then you can believe a step further that God created all of us because he created them.
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
But
Yeah,
believing
that's true.
in a creator, that's the fundamental, that's why it's so important to believe in your parents. Now, once we believe in our parents as creators, as creators of us, now we have to look at the next step. So God created everyone else. Now everyone else is important, and we have to respect them because God created me to reverence him. And guess what? God created you to reverence him.
Wow, that's true.
Where do I have the right to knock off you,
Right.
who God created to revere him?
That's a good point.
What in the world?
That's
Right?
true. You can't kill something else that God created.
He
to revere
created
him.
you to serve him. So I can't go and bump you off.
Right.
He created me to serve him. Now, if he gives me the okay to bump you off, and he tells you what the circumstances, like for example, if you're trying to bump me off, then I can kill you first or something like that. But otherwise, I don't have the right. Or if maybe like you're really giving him a hard time, then maybe there would be certain circumstances. If you've committed certain crimes, maybe then. But otherwise, you can't just kill people. God created them. If he's God and he created all of us, then you can't kill another person. Not because that person's going to get mad at you or his family's going to get mad at you or that their life has some value. No, their life is valued only vis-a-vis being a creation of God.
That makes sense.
Okay, next comes adultery. Adultery is really serious. You know what the real problem with adultery is?
I can think of things that are probably going to shake. Go ahead. You better answer that one.
So the real problem with adultery, you would think, well, it messes up marriages and it's not nice to the other guy or the woman. Someone's messing around with their spouse.
Right.
No. It's all a God thing. You know what the problem is? When there is adultery, and especially when adultery becomes widespread,
Right.
nobody knows who their father is.
Well, that's a good question. That's a good point, actually, right?
Right?
Wow.
As in, who's your daddy?
Yeah, that's not
Right?
a good thing. Wow.
Okay, so when people don't know who's your daddy,
Wow.
then they can't revere their parents.
Really? So that's one of the main reasons why adultery is a bad thing?
When you can't revere your parents, so it leads to a general malaise in a society because the society doesn't revere
that's a
its
good point.
creator.
Wow.
If you don't know who your dad is, you don't really respect anybody because, maybe he's my father. How would I know if he's my father? I might even go curse him out or talk about him, refer to him by name, or even punch the guy out. I don't even know he's my father.
It's because you're losing that chain of creation, a chain of respect and reverence for your creation.
When you don't revere your creator, your immediate creator, your father,
Probably not going to revere your ultimate
how can you
creator
take the
either.
next step? As a matter of fact, you get this type of sense
Never
like,
heard this before.
I'm not really beholden to anybody because
I can do whatever the heck I
I
want.
don't have a father. I don't even have a father. I mean, yeah, he's probably out there somewhere, but who knows who he is? And some bum, and where I know.
Wow.
So you don't develop a sense of reverence for your creator. So that's why adultery is so bad, because it creates garbled lines, and after a while, no one really knows who
That's
to
interesting.
revere and who to appreciate. Okay, the next one is, you shall not steal.
Oh, there it's steel. Okay.
Steal, thou shalt not steal. Okay, so you shall not steal. Now, what are we talking about, by the way? Surprise, surprise, folks, for those of you who don't know, that thou shalt not steal in the Ten Commandments means people.
You should not steal people.
Don't steal people. Not allowed to steal people. There is another place in the Torah where it talks about stealing other people's
Interesting.
stuff.
Okay. That's
But
it.
this is talking about stealing people. Now, generally, at least in the old days, stealing people had to do with, we're not talking about like human trafficking as much as,
right.
people would attack other people and they'd grab the kids
Right.
and ride off with them.
Right.
And then you'd raise them and they're your,
And you do that with wives and everything too.
yeah, they're your children, or they're your slaves, or they're your whatever they are, But what happens is that when you steal children, then they lose all contact with their parents. There's no more sense of continuity. The kid doesn't, I don't know where I came from. I mean, this guy's not my father. I was just picked up from somewhere at some point when I was a baby. Someone just snatched me. And, I was raised over here. So these are supposedly my parents.
So a lot of this is going back to your parents.
It's going back to parents. And parents is going back to
The ultimate.
God, the
Right.
Creator.
Wow.
So don't commit adultery because it garbles the lines of transmission. Don't steal people because then people don't know who belongs to whom, and they don't know their fathers. So it's wrong to steal people. Okay.
And this doesn't mean adoption or anything like that. If he didn't have a parent, if he didn't.
Right. Well, listen. If the person doesn't have a parent, then they're already in a spot where they don't know who their parent are. Their parent is bugged out on them. The parent is putting them up for adoption. That means they're already in a bad situation. So then, you're trying to help out, and there's already been a problem there.
Yep.
If the parents, whoever the parents were, most likely had paid a little bit more attention to not committing adultery and stuff like that,
Right.
might have, and they were more concerned about knowing who's following who.
Right.
Probably a lot of a lot of the adoption situations would, a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them would go.
Right.
Okay, after not stealing, what do we got? Don't bear false witness. Now here we move into the next step. In general, you're not allowed to hurt other people. The reason that they put killing up there first is because it's a very severe punishment. So they listed them by severity of punishment.
Right.
And the worst thing is to kill. But now we're getting back to harming people. You can harm people in basically three ways. You can hurt them, literally kill them.
Physically, yeah.
Yeah, kill them. You can also testify about them and cause them a loss.
Right.
Or you can physically steal from them. So we got thou shalt not kill. Then there is thou shalt not bear false witness. Okay? Which means you can't go lying about the other guy, gets him in trouble.
Right.
Takes away property from him and all that. He stole that property belongs to him.
Yeah.
You owe him $1,000, all that type of stuff.
Right.
Not allowed to do that. And then, in general, you're not allowed to steal or harm his property altogether. Where does all that come from? All stealing comes from one central issue, and that is coveting.
Yeah, the coveting one's always been the tough one.
Yeah. So you
I'm a coveter.
want
I try not to covet.
you want something that he has. That's not good. That's not good. Just like God gave him life, and
Right.
you can't take that away. God gave him that property, and you can't take that away.
Yes.
God didn't give you
Right.
that money to use. God gave him that money to use.
Right.
So where are you taking it away from him? You're not allowed to damage other people. And if you think about it, really, between murdering, testifying falsely, and coveting, you pretty much have all damages. It all has to be worked out in detail, but you've got generally everything that someone could do wrong to another person.
What if you just covet at home? I keep my coveting at home.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
take it out into the workplace. I don't bring it out in the community. I just covet. I'm a private coveter.
Yeah, so a lot of people think that if you covet, as long as you don't steal,
But it's still thinking about.
No. Yeah, I think wasn't that like a Jimmy Carter thing?
Oh, no, yeah, he did covet.
Coveted, but it's only with his mind.
In
And
his
as long as
mind.
you don't do anything
Right,
about
that's a
it,
good point.
you're okay. Yeah, that's not true. That's not true. Because the problem is, you have to clear it out of your mind.
Right.
If you don't clear it out of your mind, the next thing is you're going to be doing it.
But when you're driving down the road, wow, look at that car. Is that coveting, or is it I really like that car and take it from him? Which is it just appreciating what someone else has? Is that coveting?
Yeah. So if you didn't appreciate what someone else has, that's not a problem. And as a matter of fact, if you say I want one of those,
Right.
it's also not a
I
problem.
want yours.
Yeah, right. That's the problem. Like if you want a Porsche, and you say like, I think he's got a great Porsche. I want one also.
That's
That's
different.
okay. I don't want his Porsche. Matter of fact, I don't want his Porsche that's already got his cup holder in it. And all that. I don't want that.
So when we get to the wife, if he had a twin sister and you were okay with that, that's okay.
Right. Okay. We'll leave off the twin sister thing.
I'm just trying to say, if the guy doesn't want to covet his wife, maybe she should be, addressed.
I want one just like that. Yeah,
Just
right.
like that one, but
Right.
okay, but it's different.
Yeah. So certainly, if you want one just like that, that's okay. But if you want that one,
That's not okay.
that's a big problem.
okay.
That's a big problem. So this is what happens is, though, once you start coveting, all theft and defrauding and all kinds of stuff, it all comes from coveting. So one has to train themselves not to covet, and actually, even to look, not to look at other people's stuff and say, I want one even just like that.
It's
Because
going to go right. It's going to take
close.
the next step.
It's too close. It's too close. So really, the bottom line is what the Ten Commandments is. The Ten Commandments is all about, I am Lord your God. And there are 10 ways to make sure that you understand and know that I'm Lord your God. Number one, you got to believe that He's God. He took you out of Egypt and all that stuff. And after that, you got to be very careful with His name and be reverential about His name. That's a way of you expressing how important God is, how much I believe that He is so important. One day a week, you have to acknowledge the fact that He created you. On the day that He rested, you have to rest. Then you also have to acknowledge, as a step down in your interactions between people, that your Father is your Father as your Creator, and that is my human embodiment of having a Creator.
Right.
And therefore, it's all about understanding. Because of that, I have to, and I'm going to do them just a tad out of order now.
Okay.
Because it's important for me to remember who is my Father, it is also very important for there not to be any adultery, because that garbles up the lines of who is the Father. And similarly, not to kidnap children, because when you kidnap children, you're wrecking the whole order, the natural order, where children cannot revere their forebears. Then you also have to show, if you really respect God, then you have to respect the creatures that He created to serve Him by not killing them or trying to take away anything from them. And if you really want to stay away from all of that stuff, the best thing is work on your coveting.
Coveting 101, that's one of my biggest issues I got to work on.
There you go.
Now, the question, and I'm sure everybody in the audience is asking right now, everyone,
Yeah,
what's number 11?
What is number 11?
What was barely there, didn't make the top 10?
So actually, first of all, if you want to read them carefully, there actually are 14 commandments.
Oh, okay.
They're given in 10 statements.
Okay.
They're broken in 10 statements. There are actually 14
But what's
commandments.
statement number 11?
But if there would be statement number 11, that would be nearly impossible to figure out. But we could go the other direction. If you ask me, what if I had to do only one?
Okay. That's a
What if we had to go the other way and did only one? So one of them could be love your fellow as yourself.
Which I've heard that.
Right,
That's the one
because
foot thing.
and Rabbi Akiva said that is the essential rule of the Torah: love your fellow as yourself. Because if you're loving your fellow as yourself, v'ahavta l're'acha, and actually there are those that say, who's the other one? Who loved the other as yourself? You know who the other is?
What's that?
God.
Well, that makes sense because I'm treating you like that. I'm just really considering.
Revere God, and this is how you revere God, by loving other people. So that could really sum it up also. But the bottom line is, half of it is about revering God. On one side, revering God. On the other side is revering God.
Man, but it's really
Through
God.
people.
Through people. Okay, right. Which makes sense. And if everybody kind of thought that way, which I guess a lot of people don't think that way, things would be a lot different. Because it would be very difficult to harm someone else who didn't deserve harming if you were really realizing that that's the same. He was created for a purpose, just like you were created for a purpose, and that's God that created him.
Absolutely. And certainly, which, they always talk about crimes of passion.
Right.
Most murders happen because the other person has something that I want.
Right.
You know?
Right. And that makes sense.
That's the bottom line. Or he has something I want, or I feel is going to take away from me something that I want, or something like that. It's always
That's
something
how
along those
it
lines.
always is that way.
Yeah. So that's what. Now, of course, it is permitted sometimes to kill people.
Right.
But the Torah enumerates them, and there's all the details. But all of those would really go back to the fact that if he is trying to take away from me my ability to serve God, or if he has somehow rejected God through his actions, then maybe he could either be executed or I'd have to go to a fight with him. That's a different story.
Interesting. Top 10. So this makes sense. This is the real top 10.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it is every year there's still the top 10. Doesn't change. The order doesn't change. They stay
Amazing.
the top 10.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of people are trying to change this and trying to add some new ones in there if you look around. But pretty much they should stay the top 10 no matter what they tell you on TV, on CNN.
Yeah.
These are the top 10.
Amazingly enough, they've withstood the test of time, and most likely, even if they have their ups and their downs,
Right.
most likely are going to make it all the way. There's certain things that are just timeless.
Top 10. You can bet on these every
Yep.
year. All right, well, next week, I'm sure we'll have another great episode.
Yeah.
And of course, we're back.
Next week is Monday, is the holiday of Shavuos. Is the second day of the holiday of Shavuos. So the holiday of Shavuos, the giving of the Torah with the Ten Commandments, we celebrate here outside of Israel on Sunday and Monday.
Okay.
So we're going to be celebrating that on Monday.
So it'll be the next
I
Monday.
guess so.
We'll be back. All right, we'll see you then in Camera Ken. No more coveting. No more coveting. All right, we'll be back next week.